Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
Okay, this is a springtime equipment update conversation. We're talking values of equipment. We had a conversation with TJ Masker of Tractor Zoom at Farm Progress Show last fall. And we've got another Tractor Zoom representative hanging out with us today, Mr. Andy Campbell, to give us an idea of what has changed since last fall. So, Andy, welcome to the podcast studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, listen to that radio voice.
Man, he's got it.
Yes.
A lot of practice yelling at the kids.
A lot of practice. So please tell me in your past life that you were a radio DJ or disc jockey.
I was not. No, not even close. I was a professor, so I probably gave like 1,000, maybe 2,000 lectures over the course of my time. But hopefully your listeners are paying more attention than my students actually did.
I don't know. How would you not pay attention to a guy like this?
Where did you teach?
Central College. So I
Okay.
taught a lot of marketing, strategy, ops.
Makes sense, yeah, Pella. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Okay, so give us a little bit of background what you're doing for Tractor Zoom.
So with Tractor Zoom, I do a little bit of the marketing, but a lot of industry analysis. So we pull in tons of data. I think we have right now about $27 billion worth of equipment data, and I try to paint that picture. So I also farm up in northern Iowa, and by bridging the gap of understanding what's going on at the farm, I get to know our dealers, our farm credit institutions, and then I get to see our data and really taking the data and making it real for those customers about what they should be seeing within the data, making it make sense for them.
Okay, back up a second. You said billion.
27.
It's a B.
27 billion with a B?
Yeah.
That's going to be like half of the equipment in the United States.
Maybe more. So over the course, we've been collecting data since 2018.
Okay.
And I came on in early 2020. And right then, and at that time, I thought it was a lot of data that I was dicing up and messing with. And I look back at it, and I bet that was less than 1% of what we're pulling in now. I bet what we pulled in for maybe the first year was what we pull in now in a month, maybe even a week.
I see.
So we are collecting and amassing so much data so quickly. It's the epitome of that. It's the hockey stick when you see our growth in data
Okay.
collection. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's nice to be able to dice up because I don't have this, in the back of my mind, like, is this really representative of the market when you know you're covering about 85% of the auction market? You can, have pretty good confidence.
Feel
Good.
pretty confident the information we're going to share with our listeners today is the latest information and pretty accurate too.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and when you guys might not know this, but Kyle, one of the founders or the founder of Tractor Zoom, came to my house. He says, "Hey, I'm thinking of starting Tractor Zoom." This is what I think. I said, "Man, you have an uphill battle. You have some giants out in Nebraska that have a enormous amount of data in front of you. I don't know if there's room for someone else in that space." And he has successfully done exactly what he said he's going to do.
Yeah, and you don't know how many auctioneers or dealers told him the exact same thing when he said, "Hey, here's what I have to offer," and they're like, "No, like so and so, X, Y, and Z, they already do it." And then what he's been like fantastic on is focus and just saying, "Okay, here's what they do generally, but here's what's really missing in the market. Here's what farmers need, or here's
Right.
what dealerships need, or farm credits. Like the world can get better." And so he kept very focused. He kept the team focused on how do we just do this much better. And so the user design is nice, but the data structure itself is fantastic. It's fantastic to work with because I'm not cleaning stuff up. It's there, and it really represents the machines without me having to worry about, is this a disc jockey or an equipment jockey, moving the price around or something. It's high quality, good stuff.
Okay, so now we brought some of the same information last fall. Things have changed since then. So let's just start big picture first, and then we'll kind of get into some smaller categories. Overall, since September, how's the equipment market changed?
It has changed actually quite a bit. And right preceding September, we were starting to see some changes, but we weren't quite sure if it was a blip on the radar or if it was really a leading trend. And it started with combines. We started, for the past 2 years, it's been supply constraints, right? And so we haven't been able to get anything the dealer. Lots have been empty. It's been skyrocketing prices. And that's been the story. But in August, we started to see combines return to the market. And, it was a bit of a trickle, but by mid-August, there was a lot more combines year over year on that auction market. Not yet dealer lots. And then late August, September, so this probably would have been right after the Farm Progress Show, we started to see a lot more combines return year over year. Like, okay, this looks like something is happening here. Started talking to some dealers about it, and what we believe it had happened, but we're seeing it within the data, is the OEMs were delivering a lot more of the combines, probably a little late for a lot of farmers, but then they were delivering those combines to the farmers post-harvest, but that essentially cascaded down through the dealership, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 trade-ins.
Right.
And that supplies what dealers have been, dealing with here, especially in the Midwest.
And I heard that a couple of different instances to where somebody had already had their trade-in sold, but they didn't want to let the trade-in leave their farm until their new combine showed up. Yeah. So I could see how that would cascade beyond just the first trade-in
Right.
to the next person. But how hard would that have been for a dealer, Dave, to sell something that they didn't even already have and couldn't even commit to a delivery line? But I'm sure that's what they had to navigate.
So the combines are there now. What's the price done on them?
So the price, and so we saw this, August, September, especially into September, October. And so we've seen a significant price reduction in combines at dealerships, ever since this started happening.
Okay.
Not to the point where it's a fire sale,
Yeah.
but a dealer, like any kind of business, doesn't want a lot of holding cost. And if they don't get rid of a combine by December, it's pretty tough for them to get rid of it January through the following July. And so, it's kind of the saying on dealerships that if you don't sell it by January 1st, you're probably not going to sell it until July, August. And so there were aggressive price reductions up to that point in time. And a lot of the dealers were ahead of this. They were looking at their inventory tools and trying to plan this out. But, you can't plan for everything.
Yeah. I noticed this last week, like you said, I've been watching some combines. And I think Sullivan and Steffes had some combines, a lot of late model combines that came up for sale. And I felt like they didn't sell very cheap at all. There was a couple good ones in there. But so people are buying.
They are.
In March.
Oh, yeah. They're buying, and you're seeing that in other categories, and we can kind of get to that too. But what I've been seeing is kind of a double bump in the market where it represents two sets of buyers. Yeah. So you've got one set that really wants that late model, low hour, and they're willing to buy it. They've got plenty of profitability over these last couple of years to be able to do so. They're still offsetting some profitability for whatever tax year they're in, and they're after that, and they will search and be competitive for what they want. Yeah. But then you've got a few others that are really watching, the rising costs, input costs going up, and they're looking forward here to this next 2023 year, and I think being a little more cautious. Yeah. And so you're starting to see the late model, low hour stuff still chase some record prices, and that's great. But then you're really starting to see the later stuff, the older stuff, lag behind. And start to be a separate type of buyer's market.
So would you say, Dave's got an auction going on right now that has a 2009?
9570.
9570. So 2009 vintage. We're talking 15 years old.
Yep.
How are you seeing that age of combine fall into the market?
Soft. And I mean, it's not an S series combine. Those are.
It is.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
This
one's not.
Yeah, yep. But it's similar to that. I mean, there's not as many, so it's not as commoditized. Maybe as an S670 or something. Yeah. But it's it's not a Class 9. It's not a Class 10.
I would echo that because talking Deere specifically, you get into the S700 series. Those were selling like hotcakes this last week. And then you drop down to a 600 series, and it's like, okay, that's a pretty good price.
I was going to ask that.
And then before that, I was like, ooh, that's actually a fire sale, probably.
Is the class of combine affect who's buying? Because of the smaller stuff, maybe those guys are already set, lower hours, farm less acres, etc. So they keep it longer versus a guy with a larger frame machine that's going over lots of acres. Of course, they put their hours on, move, get it maintenance, go to the next one.
Yep.
And so I got to assume that inventory moves quicker or moves more often, rather.
Right. And I think they're going to run into an issue on the larger Class 9s, maybe Class 10s here in a second. But really, when you look at the type of buyers and the class of combines that they're after, I think in 21, 22, when we had really good profitability, I think some farmers took that opportunity to scale up. And so maybe one class. I mean, you're not jumping two classes.
Sure.
But so that made 7s and 8s a hot ticket.
I see.
And so we saw, especially 8s, really jump quite a bit in that first year in 21. Saw 7s climb quite a bit year over year in 22 in terms of their overall value. But lately, we've seen those stall out, not go down, but I haven't seen a lot of price increases from Class 7s and Class 8s since this fall. they've been fairly steady, but 5s and 6s act differently, and seeing those drop.
Years before, studying the data from Iron Comps and Tractor Zoom, you guys had it separated. There was a huge divide where that hockey stick dropped. And where it dropped was a certain amount of hours.
Right.
Do you have that analytic with you of what is it 1,800 hours and prior, or where's it at?
It depends a little bit on what type of combine you're looking at.
Okay.
And then also how supply constrained you are. So let's take this before we went to the mess that was, 21, 22 in the short supply. Then you're probably talking about 1,500, SEP hours, maybe even a little bit less. People started getting picky. You're really starting to ratchet up the maintenance. And so that kind of became that demarcation line of you're super steep before that in your depreciation.
Yep.
After that, you really start to level out. And then once the first year of supply constraint went by, what I saw was essentially you could lay the two depreciation graphs from one year over the next, and it shifted right, completely shifted right, probably almost 500 SEP hours.
Basically a season of running.
Exactly, yeah. And so people couldn't find what they needed, so they went to the next best option that they could find, and then they battled for it. And so you're right, it essentially pushed that season to the right a little bit.
Yeah, so out of his comments so far, I think the biggest change since fall to now is we actually have inventory. If Corey's going shopping for a combine, he actually has choices now. They still might be expensive, but you got a choice.
They're very expensive. If they're on the dealer lot, they are listed high.
Yeah.
I feel like.
But you at least have a choice. There was times to where you'd pull up and search for a model of a combine there over the last 2 years, and there would be a dozen.
Yeah.
Now there might be,
And so that's combine specific.
Yeah.
Now, Corey, you were talking about a tractor that blew it out of the water the other day that you sent me. I've seen tractors still stay really aggressive. Is the supply and demand still there on that, or is it just combines we got now supply?
So combines are probably a neat picture where supply is returned and it's softened that market, but they're still expensive. And, it's just affected the classes and the different hours separately, but it's really softened those higher hour combines. Move on to row crop tractors especially, and the supply is actually, I don't want to say it's returning, but year over year we've seen about a 15% increase in the amount of available supply, both coming in through dealerships but also at auctions. And so we're seeing a little bit of that come back, but you would think, okay, increase the supply, you've got Econ 101, you got a drop in demand or at least drop in price, but that's not the case. We're seeing an increase in price that's happening at the dealership lot, but also people that are chasing it at auction, and really up and down the hour category. So it's row crop tractors are sought after right now. People want them. I'm not seeing really any softening in that market at all.
That's not great news.
No.
Unless you're wanting to sell. I mean, if you've got a sale in your future or you're making a change, because I did talk to a gentleman on Monday about how they're going to do more no-till. So they're going to be able to eliminate some of their larger horsepower tractors, and they're looking at taking advantage of, after this spring, hopefully a strong, market to sell a tractor in that they may not need additional horsepower for. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at things.
Right. Yeah, you got a few of those instances. I don't see a lot of people retiring now, but if there's anybody getting out of the game, then, obviously a good time to get some good prices on those. But, by and large with those row crops, there's more of them on there. It's certainly still not the supply that we saw pre-pandemic, but more year over year. But it's just
How long is
still
it going to
expensive.
take for us to get that supply back? How long until we can actually see tractors on dealers' lots? I feel like all I see.
This is what I've just got a little theory that I made this week that I don't know that they want it to get back to that point, because Van Wall and AW or AHW or whatever out in Illinois and all that, they had so many combines on that Sullivan sale. One sale, and then there's a bunch ever. But the salesmen are still complaining that they don't have enough. They have inventory, but they don't have enough to sell. Why aren't they selling them? Why aren't they giving those to the salesmen to sell them?
See, and I have dealers buying on our auction to get inventory. So now we have auction prices inflated.
But is it for inventory, or do they have a client that's looking for that combine?
They have a client that's looking for that
It's
combine.
a, it's a pre-sold.
It's pre-sold already because they wanted to buy it from a dealer thinking that would be much better, and all they did was pay 10% more because they...
Probably more than 10%.
Yeah. and really on the dealer's standpoint too, obviously it hurts them if they have to hold equipment for a long period of time. That's going to be one of their biggest risks, one of the biggest costs.
Correct.
But they're still trying to work in the middle with the tight supply and they're actively going out like at auction. They're trying to get these pieces of equipment pulled into their area of responsibility to service their customers in their area and then trying to balance that. But I really think from the OEM standpoint that they went through 12, 13 into 14 when they really produced a ton of equipment.
Yeah.
So high time in farming, make hay while the sun is shining, and they did that, and then they suffered the consequences from having a lot of inventory going through some rough years.
Yeah.
And they also have supply chain issues right now too. And so that stuff's not figured out yet. And so why ramp up production more than what you possibly need, or more that can possibly hurt the equipment market in the years to come?
I went on the tour of the Des Moines Works John Deere plant, sprayers, cotton pickers, and tillage, probably about a month and a half ago. And they said everything that's being built there is going somewhere and it's sold. They're not producing to have stock
Inventory.
anymore. That hurts me because I'm not buying
That's true.
a brand new piece of equipment because of where prices have gone. I need them to hurt.
Well, that's the same thing with an automobile maker. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have an inventory sitting on your lot, to an extent, you need to have something there to draw attention. You need me to turn my head as I drive by to know that your dealership's even there. Otherwise, it's an empty parking lot with a building. But ultimately, the less inventory you have, the more advantageous it is to the retailer.
Is this just like I go out to eat restaurants about every day, and everybody says, "Oh, COVID, we're short supply." COVID's over. How are we still short
the
supply?
mentality.
I think they're keeping it for better margins and just saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you had to wait 4 hours. It's because of COVID, and we're going to make more money."
I've told people over and over again that week that we were in Orlando, we never had a server shortage.
No.
Nope.
And we had the best service, but we also probably paid, on average, double what we would pay to eat here. So clearly there's some type of a cost inflation related to that experience. But I couldn't believe that we never were short a server, never short a cook. The food always came out decently on time. Maybe we were just in good company and didn't realize it. But
So if COVID's affecting that market, now my question is COVID still affecting the farm machinery market?
I don't think COVID in particular is. But what I think COVID did is it jolted a few things within the equipment industry. And one of them, and the biggest one that we're still feeling, is the supply chain.
They hired
So-
analytics guys like him, and now they're just saying, "It's not worth it, Corey. We're going to screw you over."
yes,
There you go. Yeah, but I think it's here to stay. I think from an overall supply chain thing that it's going to be the new normal, that it's not going to be what it was, where we had a stocked supply chain that was efficiently running all the way through. That requires a whole global marketplace to work really well, really seamlessly. And even the beasts like John Deere are going to have a lot of issues offshore getting the stuff that they need. And if they're going to onshore it, then all of a sudden you've got to be working with a lot of players down in Mexico, Central America, to be able to source those parts. That doesn't happen overnight.
which I just saw a week or so ago that there was a major railroad merger that is going to connect Mexico to Canada in a more uniform fashion, which is going to allow, I mean, the spurs that railroad had going to ports in Mexico could change some of the ways our equipment gets imported.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a little side note there. But
I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, it probably is here to stay, but we've still been propped up by relatively good commodity prices. And I don't know if you guys have watched beans and corn, beans particularly last day or two. I mean, we've lost 60 cents.
Yep.
And there's still more downside, and we're getting below the cost of production. And then if corn falls below $4.50, I mean, it'll take a while to get exhaust through the cash on hand. But when does stuff change that way? Or how low?
yeah, and that was a comment I was going to make when you were mentioning the combines, the fact that they're still selling well. Correct. Now there's choices, but there's still more buyers. Just like with your farmland, there's still more buyers than there is inventory. So farmland values keep climbing and going up. Now, I did watch on an auction time sale, unfortunately. Sorry, we probably cut that out. No. Watched on a sale earlier this week that there was a John Deere 4455 with a loader, power shift transmission, and a John Deere 7410 power shift had the same number of hours relatively, but there's about like a 7 or 8 year difference in the makes of those tractors. And that 4455 sold for $40,000 more than the 7410 did.
Wow.
That surprised me because I was sitting there going, okay, what am I missing? I started going through the details and, I couldn't find anything that was $40,000 worth difference except for those sound guards still just sell well.
Yeah. On that one, I don't know. I mean, seeing those side by side, that's still hard to explain.
Yeah.
Although we have been seeing for some time. I mean, the 4455s, the 4440s, all of those just super reliable. And when farmers just need something that they can know that they can buy now, it'll work in 5 years, it's going to work in 10 years, and they can work on it, I think that's a big difference maker.
I got one coming up. Leak buyer.
I've been watching. I want to buy everything that's on your sale.
One owner.
Yeah, I want to buy everything that's on that sale.
Some of those go for crazy amounts of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked row crop tractors, we've talked combines. What else? What's another segment that's had some changes since September?
Planters and sprayers. Planters, just got done with the webinar on planters, so I know more about planters than I probably ever cared to. But planters, to a great extent, sprayers to a slightly lesser extent. We've been seeing a decreasing amount of those at auction now for almost 10 quarters straight. And it's just less and less and less. And I don't entirely know why.
It's the pucks.
PUKs. I was just
Yeah,
kidding.
it's
You
the-
beat
it's
me
the
to
Tuck on
it.
pucks.
Performance upgrade kits.
Okay, that was one of the theories that was tossed out
You
there.
did it on yours.
Yeah,
You
we bought an old planter, 2008, but an older planter than we had, and
upgraded
spent
it.
$50,000, $60,000, and
Upgraded to
upgraded
high
to 'em.
speed, put a whole new
Brand
row
new.
unit on
Yep.
it,
So
etc.
essentially you gutted it to the bar and then
Yeah.
put everything else on.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I have a question for you that I was just asked by an equipment dealer that we work with. He's like, how do I evaluate this trade-in? Because they threw $100K on this thing, and then now they want to trade it in. And he's like, there's no comparable out there. So I can't say, this sale is, how it would bring an auction or at another dealer. So what would you expect if you're going to take that planter and try to trade it?
Now that it's been upgraded.
Yes. Now it's
depends
been
on how
upgraded.
many years it's had on the upgrades.
3
but
years is
3
what you
years.
said, yeah.
But you know how much an Ag Leader or a John Deere or Precision upgrade is for high speed and hydraulic downforce and all that. I would just say it's got to be 50% of that value plus whatever the value of that 24-row planter that's a ground drive would be, in my mind.
Yeah. And I would say that from the banking side of things, I would expect something like that. We're immediately going to expect, Corey does this upgrade to his planter. He wants to borrow money from me for the upgrades, that I'm going to discount it right away from the beginning out of the box.
Right.
So I'm probably going to give him a 35% discount first year, because you're not going to be able to turn around and sell that row unit for what you paid for it coming out of a box, period, more than likely. After that, I haven't done much analysis at all as to what that does going down the pipe. I just saw a TikTok this morning of the PUK that John Deere offers going. He said, I've got 24 units sitting on pallets. Talking about the story, he said, but they're not for sale. And I couldn't figure out why they weren't for sale.
Yeah.
Well, you must have saw the same one.
Yeah, but why are they not for sale?
Why are those not for sale?
Everything's for sale.
And then he walked over to the planter that they just upgraded, all new row units. But the bar, the tank, everything else stayed the same. So I wonder if that's why you're not seeing as many planters hit auctions.
It could be. And I think it's really going to change, your business from being able to value those things. It's certainly changing the dealership standpoint because they don't know what they can offer and what they can resell it for. And with planters especially, because every farmer is different from their mentality of how they want to plant. Every field is different. And especially you get into geographies. So you get into your, more of your hills area. You've got to go smaller planters to get around corners and stuff. And once you throw all those variables into this place, then one planter for you is not going to be the same for somebody else. And if it is, the likelihood that they're your neighbor and they need to plant at the same time is going to be less. And so I think the marketplace for these planters with the upgrade kits is going to get really hairy and really small.
It's going to get murky.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I was thinking about too is did a certified technician install that?
Right.
That knew exactly what they were doing, or did the farmer do
Or
it?
was it
and just-
me that did it in a freezing shop?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
just-
you run the wires? I mean, it might work, but did you run the wires right? Because there's so many finicky things of how you get a planter to run,
Right.
and there's no good way. I'm just going to start this planter up and see if it runs good.
Ever tell you
You know?
guys? Ever tell you my
go test
story
drive.
about my first truck?
No, I'm sure you have, but no.
So I had a 1982 Ford Ranger, piece of crap, little blue single
Ford
cab.
effing Ranger.
A Ford Ranger, right? So I bought it for like $800, and I thought I'm going to performance upgrade this. So I put in the sweetest
You did not say
stereo system, and I had about $1,500 extra dollars in my stereo system. And my dad asked me, I was going to sell it. He says, "What are you going to ask for it?" And I said, $3,000. He says, well, how do you figure on that? And I said, well, I got a $2,000, $1,500 stereo in it, plus the car, and we cleaned it and everything. He says, you still have a 1982 piece of crap Ford Ranger with this many miles on it. So it's going to be tough to value, anything because the all the comparables in the market say that it's only worth this. I don't care how good your stereo system is unless it just gives more flair and panache. I think that my dad said it helps it sell faster. If you find the right kid that wants the same stereo, that wants the same everything you put in, it'll sell faster, but I don't know if it'll bring any more money.
Okay, so looking at planners, do you have any data around which size of planner is selling better than others? Because I've got a theory, but I want you to go first.
Are you going to stick to your theory and not change it if I tell you?
I've got it. I've
Write
got my
the
own
number
theory.
down on the piece of paper.
Because I got to admit that I was wrong. When I thought of, and I really looked at planners a lot, early pandemic, pre-pandemic, of what sizes were increasing and how the whole industry was going. And I was, thinking it was going to be the same. Everybody's writing down their answer.
Yeah.
So I was guessing bigger. 24 is what my guess was, that this was going to increase. Maybe your 1631s. I knew 36 rows pre-pandemic were increasing in value and popularity. It's 12.
Gosh dang, I heard this the other day too. I should have put 12.
Oh, really?
12 row planners.
Because everyone can use it.
Yeah, I put 16. I put 16 rows
16 as
high.
well.
Yeah.
16's not doing bad. But 12 is the fastest in terms of value increase year over year. 16's not far behind it, but 24 lags it. Certainly.
And if
they're
you
going to
make
do.
a 12 row fast, it can plant what a 16 can,
Yeah.
same acres at 7 mile an hour.
So that was my thought, and I wrote more words than that. Was larger, your DB80s, your 80-foot, 90-foot, your 30s, your 36. Those are getting cheaper because of the same thing. You take a 24 row and make it fast, and now you're covering the same capacity, but you have a narrower
I know several
bar.
farmers that have gone from 36, 32s down to 24, 16s.
Yep.
High speed, the multiple planters. Then you don't have to have the big tractors that cost a lot of money. And
Yep. So that was my philosophy, was everybody's going smaller but faster.
Yes, smaller and faster. And I think just because you can plant faster, you're not necessarily planting a lot faster. I think what you're doing is, and what I've been seeing in terms of how people are placing values on row units, that it's really ensuring that placement and the spacing, and then you can get the right kind of emergence coming out of the ground. I think farmers are putting a higher value on that more than getting it in the ground as fast as possible.
And there's
Didn't
no way. That's the biggest influence you have on your yield.
I was just going to say, didn't we do a podcast and I asked that question? What's the number one thing you could change if you change grain bins or space or extra way to make money? It was planner.
Singulation and accuracy and seed depth, consistency, and conditions. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't think it'd be 12s. I figured it'd be 16s.
Well, I did ask, I'm blanking on his last name, but Nathan down from Yield Tech Services in Missouri, they just focus on planters. And I told him this because our data scientist pulled the data and showed it to me. And I said, this is not what I think it should be. What do you think? And he's like, yeah. He's like, a lot of farmers are probably saving capital on not going as big on the bar. They're going fewer row units, but per row unit, they're spending more. And we were seeing that. We even we broke down our data with ExactEmerge, and the amount that farmers were paying per row unit was highest on 12, second highest on 16, and then you go to 24. So they're paying more per row unit on the smaller, saving overall capital because they're not spending on a large planter, but they want to make sure that they've got it done right.
And if you can go buy an old bar that's still good and slap them on there, you don't got to go pay $250,000. You got a nice planter for $100,000.
So, side question. You can edit this out if you want. What's it take to be a data scientist? Like when do you get the title scientist? Like, I study data, but am I a data scientist? Like, I'm curious.
Well, we had a short conversation about this. Hank Monsanger, he's our lead data scientist. And so when he got introduced in our webinar, it's lead data scientist. And I look at him and he's like, I'm the only one. So therefore, so far I'm the lead. But yeah, on the data scientist, I mean, you from what you do from a functional standpoint is you've got to know your numbers. And I mean, we're talking deep statistical analysis and understanding machine learning. And it's really a lot of computing and coding and understanding how you're going to use that sophisticated software.
But it's not like a certificate on a wall or anything. You didn't have to go get certified to be a scientist?
That I don't entirely know. I know that he went and got some accelerated degrees. I'm trying to think if Georgia Tech, they've got a good program. I don't know if he came out of there.
I'm going to be a podcast scientist.
I will sell you a degree.
I will sell you a degree.
You're an Excel scientist.
I could be an Excel scientist. I like this. All right, back to the equipment, because we were talking in this category, planters and sprayers to an extent. Let's get to the sprayer side.
Okay, so sprayers, it's not as dramatic of a decrease in terms of volume that I've been seeing, and so maybe it is a little bit of just the supply chain, and people don't want to be without a sprayer if they've got one. Bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, but we've been seeing a little bit less of those quarter after quarter. The only caveat is right now in the last 3 months, so it's not a true calendar quarter, but December, January, February, we are seeing more right now than we saw last, and so it's the first quarter that I've seen in maybe 8-9 quarters where the supply has actually started to uptick a little bit year over year. Again, it's a 1 quarter data point. I don't know if it's going to continue, but starting to see a few more of those.
So I feel like it hasn't, but I think I'm looking. I got a Hagee, and I'm looking for a Hagee. And I cannot find what I'm looking for there.
Yeah.
At least I can't find anything in my price range. But
People ask me on farmland all the time what influencers are changing the market, interest rates, foreign conflicts, et cetera, et cetera. What outside influencers, maybe foreign conflicts, maybe politics, maybe farm bill, new presidential election, you see outside influencers affect the market?
Yeah, 100%. And so it depends on when you talk about market, what are you looking at? Are you looking at auction or are you looking at dealer? So if we want to just take a look at auction first, what I've seen is, and I've done regression analysis, and you can track it to corn. It's not obviously a perfect fit, but it's there. And so one of the things that I think it tracks most closely to is just overall farmer sentiment. And then you've got fingers from there to other things. But I've looked at Purdue's data that they get off of their farmer sentiment survey and then tracked it along with our data. And it follows pretty closely. Even when you have a couple month dip in their data, you look at our data after it's normalized for hours or something like that, and you'll see it follow in trend. And so I think it's from an auction standpoint, how does a farmer feel when they're at the auction?
Right.
And that might make that difference on are they bidding 2 to 3% more, or are they holding off once the base
And
goes
this
all the
high?
time.
This last
Market's an attitude.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you don't offer buyer's premium. Then you start everybody off on the wrong foot.
and Purdue's
I don't know.
Purdue's latest results, there'll probably be another set of data before this show actually airs, but it's like the first time it was below neutral for a long time.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, you can have, want to call it relatively high corn prices right now, but I think it's a lot of the change. So we've been used to a really high corn price, but I would say, it's month over month changes if they start to see a trend in corn prices. I mean, I am way less optimistic as a farmer right now than I was a couple months ago.
Oh, yeah.
I get that. But then that, of course, corn prices, you've got China that's influencing a little bit, a lot of Ukraine that's influencing it, what's coming out of South America, and then our weather and the planting intentions. And so from the corn prices, those probably affect sentiment, but upstream from that, you've got everything global.
Yeah, because that was the big thing that came out of the last month's report was the Russia-Ukraine conflict, our relations with China, the fact that Mexico is still continuing to hold their ground on genetically modified corn. There was so many factors that went into why that sentiment was below 50 or below neutral for the first time in a while.
So Tanner wants analytics as a banker and wants to be able to forecast the future for loaning people money. Corey wants analytics for the future to know that he's not paying too much now and that the market's going to go down or it's going to go up, and let's buy now. So everybody wants the data. I want the data so I can give to my customers, hey, it's a good time to sell. It's not a good time to sell. How far away are we from predictive learning that you can tell me that the trend 6 months from now is going to be this?
I think infinite, if that's a word. I don't think we're going to get there. I really don't think it'll happen. As much as machine learning's come along, and as much as we'd like to think that we'd progress, I really think that it'll be not future prediction, but it'll be instantaneous understanding. So if you think about electronically traded funds or whatever, they can react to things that they hear in the news on the minute. When things get published, they're reading PDFs and making actions. And so if whether it's corn trading or land or whatever else, if we can understand what's happening in the market right now and make sense of it fast enough, then I think that's really where it's going to be, and that's where a lot of leaders in the market will be. Once you get out further,
Still a lot of emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and really emotion's part of it too, because you're trying to anticipate what the market is doing, but the definition of the market are other buyers and sellers.
But some of our grain marketers that we know, they're using predictive analytics to go forward. I'm just curious how much of the decision making is emotion versus is there a pattern?
I guarantee you there's a pattern. It's just what percentage of your predictability coming from AI or from machine learning
Is correct.
is going to provide an accurate assumption to where you hit 9 out of 10 times. Will it be 100% right? Will it be 60% right? I'm sure there's a path somewhere
Yeah.
that can get us to that.
So let's change gears for a second. Who are the sellers? What I'm seeing that I have in my auction market is people that have passed. So people that are passed, I'm getting estates, and they're selling the equipment. The kids are.
Right. Yeah. And so, I did a lot of this analysis pre-pandemic because at the time we were seeing some interesting trends with retirements versus liquidations and how those were, trending versus, overall dealer or consignment type of sales. And so into 18, into 19, we're seeing a lot more, retirements because maybe people are choosing to get out of the business versus estate sales. So we're seeing increase of retirement, increase of liquidation versus estate sales. And then once 2020, once the good times essentially started to hit, you started to see that trend reverse really quick and flip. And so I haven't done an analysis yet this year to see, who's leading it, but I have looked on the retirement side and, nobody at an appreciable increasing rate is getting out in terms of retirement right now.
Corey, get out. It'd be a good time.
Yeah, retire. Yep.
Sign me up.
But I do feel like I've seen more consignment sales, whether that's individual farmers piecing off a piece here or a smaller scale doing a retirement that didn't warrant their own sale, or it's dealers moving inventory. I feel like I see more of those now than we did last year.
I'd be interested to know, having sold some of my own equipment and bought some new equipment this past year, and taxes are such a big part of that. As an auctioneer, I want to go to somebody and say, let's sell everything. Let's sell it all. I'd love to take the commission on it, right? And it'd be a bigger event, bigger. We used to sell the event, okay? So as consumers, we bought, Johnson's are having an auction. Let's go. What do they got? I don't know, but they got free hot dogs. That's what we did. We went to an event because it was a full retirement.
Right.
Anymore, Corey wants to upgrade his tractor or sell his sprayer and buy into a new truck or something. So you're selling a non-like item for a different item, but it's still capital on the balance sheet. How important has the change been to a one-item auction? An auction time, a big iron. Most of the small companies can do it, including myself. It's just a one item. I wonder how many of those items sell just one at a time versus a large. Corey, I mean, you don't sell all of your equipment at once.
No. Well, if you go by my dad's mentality, we don't sell. We just buy and we never get rid of. And someday it'll be a big old equipment auction.
But then you have the flip side, and it's the how many one-off items get sold for more than what they're worth.
Right. Essentially do a study where you parse out, you've got, call it like 2 or less, items sold per auction ID. Do a study there, compare them to like comparable items that have sold at, a 50+ auction.
Yeah, because I guarantee you we could put a call out to all of our listeners and ask them to write in with all of their stories of something that they've bought one at a time because it was sold one at a time and regretted buying because they paid too much for something that was either misadvertised or improperly inspected or never even went to see it in person.
Most of the time, yeah. Terrible details.
Fails.
Terrible pictures. Yeah.
That's an interesting study. And we've got data. I mean, it's not presented, but it's all there. Sure. I'm going to dice into that.
It would just be interesting because, I would tell you, we've asked these questions before a couple of years that the way to get top dollar for every item on your farm is to say you're retiring.
Absolutely.
That's been what we've given advice in the past. But
Tell the story.
yeah, tell the whole story. But are there still pieces that maybe have been used and abused, and it'd be better if you just put some lipstick on her and
Well, normally
did a
that's
one-item sale?
consignment auctions. Consignment was a bad word. It was 20% less than a retirement sale just because it was, why are they bringing it here? I've had guys say, well, I just need to get rid of this. Well, why? And so I hate, nobody will ever tell you this. Everybody tells you the good stuff. That's the only auction I've ever lost money at, a consignment sale. I consigned everybody's stuff, and everybody has high reserves. Everybody has high stuff. I lost my rear end on an auction once, and I said I'll never do it again. So the only consignments I do are one-off pieces. Like I got a guy in Dow's, Iowa. He's got a full farm full of equipment. He's had it for the last 6 years, retired 6 years ago. But because of depreciation schedules, he'll sell one piece a year. So one piece a year is what we get to sell.
Well, after this, Corey and I'll talk to you, and we'll just take that off your hands.
That's a long waiting time.
And he's got all the stuff set up for like all the small stuff too, the welders, the shop equipment, and it would warrant.
It would make a good sale.
It would warrant a good event, not just an item sale. But when we search for stuff now, you said it, people searching for exactly what they want. If you want, 9570, whatever you want, 155R, you are specifically searching for that. You're not searching for, wonder what this auction company has today. You're saying, I want to find and that's how people search the internet. Like all of society has changed.
So we are off the tracks here, but so could you sell that guy, since he's rode the market up, so it's actually been a good thing that he only wants to sell one piece a year, but it's a good time. Could he sell everything and then you just pay him out on each piece a year at a time, or however it works for taxes?
He'd get hit with
auction
it
side?
then.
I'd get hit with it then, I think, because I made all the income in 1 year and held it and didn't pay it out in.
But then maybe he'd only pay you the commission every time you paid out. How would that work?
I don't know.
If you sold the whole line of equipment in Dave's name, it already transferred ownership. So if the equipment's already gone, it's sold. So he'd have to account for that for a value at one point in instance. So it probably wouldn't work quite like you're thinking.
Okay.
So let's get back on tracks, because that's the only thing I do.
That's the only thing I can do here. Yeah. That's where we go the best.
As Andy, you look at your data, and it's everything encompassed under Tractor Zoom. Do you have a way to see how buyers are buying? Are they bidding online? Are they going in person?
Yeah, so we can, when we track, at least for auctions, we can see, totally in auction, completely online, or if it's combo, simulcast.
Yep.
And that was a big thing, especially pre-pandemic. I mean, I would track and see which one was increasing or which one was bringing a higher value. And then, of course, pandemic hit. Weren't any auctions for March, but then auctioneers, they were incredibly fast to adapt. Some had already, had a system set up with Proxibid or whoever else, and so then they were selling online. And then we just started seeing more and more people do it. Perhaps there were some auctioneers that, just couldn't get their stuff online, couldn't get the tech handled, and then didn't go into, future business. But really, we saw everybody from that point on that started staying with us having some online presence. And, talked to Sullivan during the pandemic, talked to a few other auctioneers, and we never heard anybody say that they wanted to go back to the way it was. A lot of people missed it. A lot of people missed the event. A lot of people, even farmers included, missed going to the physical auction if there weren't any. But even as things have opened back up and there are physical auctions again, I haven't heard of many that aren't having an online presence when they're selling equipment.
I'm going to jump in, and then I want you to expand upon it. Are you seeing the request for online coming from the sellers, or sellers wanting to have the pomp and circumstance still of an in-person event?
So I normally try to recommend an online because I think I've seen higher prices online. Higher prices online because we have a larger audience. I can hit 5 million people versus locally how many people are going to show up.
Yep.
Okay, so for the sake of fiduciary responsibility of the seller, I recommend either a live simulcast, both, or just a online only. So I think it warrants more value. I'm curious what your data says. My data says it would bring more online, which I never thought I'd say. The nostalgia of the old school auction, I say old school or the way we did it 6 years ago, I think is going to become like a letter. Like when you write a letter, you don't get that. I get emails every day, whoopty-skipty.
Hundreds of them.
But how cool is it if you get a handwritten letter? It brings back that this is more genuine. More genuine is emotion. Emotion brings higher prices. Could live auctions bring back higher prices because they're the letter of the industry, the handwritten letter? So for that reason, I have got requests from families that a lot of them just, they wanted to hear the auctioneer, wanted to see the auctioneer, and they know dad would always want it that way. So the last couple I've had, they've had a request, but they know they want it online too. So if you can do both,
The simulcast. Right.
then you're in business. Now, a lot of that small stuff, I'm called the hay rack stuff. All the first stuff before the big equipment, we used to sell that on the hay rack. Well, what's your audience? If you only have 75 people live in the crowd, you have 75 potential bidders on the hammers, the welders, the air compressors, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if we were to sell it all online, now I have that 5 million people out there again bidding on this stuff that are willing to travel. Now, I won't travel as far. Would you travel to South Dakota the other day to look at a combine?
Yeah.
Okay. Most people, that's about as far as they go. A couple states away. I'm not going to hit somebody from California to come buy a screwdriver.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I will.
I drove 3.5 hours to buy a lawnmower on an auction.
Correct. So the bigger the value, the farther you'll travel.
That makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, you bring up an interesting study standpoint of looking at simulcast versus online. You might run into an issue with, I think there's less and less people just doing strictly online, especially for a retirement or estate. But on retirement estates, if you look at just those auctions and look simulcast versus online and start to see comparable pieces, which might go more, that would be an interesting study.
That's pretty good. I like that. So now, based on podcast data and personal interest data, do you guys have much on semi-tractors and trailers?
We do. Yeah. So we're growing the amount of tractors that semi-tractors that we have is growing. Never was a core focus of ours, but obviously it's come along with every farm. And so, yeah, we've got a growing list of Peterbilts and all those. I did a study on trailers, like hopper bottom trailers, and it's been probably about a year ago, last spring, and looked at Tim T. Wilson and a few others and just how they were doing. And the price increases on those. And again, this was right in the heat of you can't find a chip.
Yep.
And so I'm thinking, shouldn't matter. Still,
It's a
should be
trailer.
plenty of these, right? They were going like crazy.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if it was the whole inflation begets inflation and just created this thought of I have to have it and it might be scarce. But yeah, we were seeing 40% year-over-year prices on very comparable trailers.
Yeah.
So
Semi-trailers were like the toilet paper of the COVID area.
They were. Yep.
It's like, literally, I don't know that I need it, but I'm going to get another one.
Yes.
And people
I don't want to be without it.
And still, it has driven up prices of hoppers to, I've seen 1-2-year-old hoppers selling for the price of a new one today. Just because it's 5-6 months out to get a new one. So someone's willing to pay it because they want it today, even though it's got a couple years worth of use. I'm like, just plan ahead a little bit and buy the new one, I guess. But
Here's a question for you, Andy.
hold on, I want to stay on the hopper
All right.
side. Okay. So the reason we bring this up is we're soliciting for sponsors and advertisers, to put commercials on the podcast. And we reached out to every hopper bottom manufacturer that we could get contact information for, and every single one of them said, we're not advertising at this time because we can't keep up with the orders we already have on our new inventory. So it sounds like that's one of those markets that they're the same thing. Will they ever go back to having inventory on their lot? I don't know, but I'm still kicking myself because there was a black triple axle Wilson hopper that I should have bought 4 years ago
for $25,000.
for $25,000 that was only 2 years old, and I probably could have doubled my investment. Turned around and sold that thing for 40 or 50 grand right now, and used it for 4
I remember you
years.
sending it to me, and you're just too conservative.
I will say on those, I think the market might behave a little differently. I don't think they'll have much incentive to tamp down their the supply. I think they're going to go gangbusters if they can go gangbusters, because I don't think there's as much brand loyalty between the different trailers.
there's not.
And so, yeah, you pump one out in the market and you can sell it, then you want to do it again and again and again.
Yeah, there's no brand loyalty. We would have pulled whatever trailer they'd have given us for a commercial spot. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I bet they're probably still supply constrained labor, probably a big issue, and steel, I don't know. But I bet if they could, they would be selling you one for $40,000 right now.
All right, I cut you off.
I got two questions. First one is for our listeners. They're going to sell something. They're going to buy something. You're tracking dealers. You're tracking auctioneers and private sales, maybe a little bit, maybe not.
No.
So
Dealers and
auctioneers versus dealers, it's a different mindset. It's wholesale versus retail is really what it is. So can you accurately compare the data? Like should I buy from a dealer, get a warranty maybe, or late model, maybe not even a warranty, and or the auction company? Is there a difference in value of what I'm going to pay?
100%. And the percent of the difference is not 100, but there is a difference for sure. And so I refer to it as a dealer premium that'll be there. And for certain older machines, you can just see that thing get closer, and there becomes less of a premium. What a dealer is going to sell, an older piece of tillage equipment might be very comparable to what you could buy at an auction. But as you get, more late model, low hour, that increases significantly. And so with that, of course, the dealer's doing a lot. They're taking on a risk and responsibility of actually carrying that inventory. They've got technicians they've got to pay for, but then they also have to worry about their trade-in process.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so they can't simply drop down to an auction type of level because they have to make money on probably that fourth or fifth type of trade-in in order to keep the rest of their business going.
That's what I've noticed in my customer base, and that's what I wrote down as you were saying that is the amount that the dealer can sell it for versus you can, the older the machine gets, is not the way that slopes for what they offer you on trade. It seems like you get past a certain age, a certain number of hours, and they don't even want it. They want you to sell it by themselves.
Right, because if they had it, they would have to turn around and liquidate it as well.
And just not enough margin there to cover their overhead.
Yep.
Right.
So, okay, so with that being said, you talk about selling it themselves. So, as I've seen a trend in society, being in the auction business for the last 15 to 20 years, more and more people get educated in selling their own stuff. Okay? I remember when eBay came around and everybody's like, oh my goodness, auctions are going to be gone. That people are going to sell their own stuff. Yet they still use auctioneers because they solve a problem. They solve the help in doing it, the knowing what the equipment is. Does this have Green Star? Does it have a globe? What's the difference between IVT and what's the difference between IV4 transmission and how's that work? And does it have duals and what percent is it at? So with all that being said, guys that are coming up, like Corey's age, very good with technology. At any given second, auction time, somebody could turn on Facebook Marketplace for selling your own stuff. We have the customers. And so really where they're at is Marketplace. If they have, the reason they hired companies, auctioneers, dealers, is because the dealers had the people to buy it. The reason you go to a cattle market, they have the cattle buyers. The reason you go to an auction company, they have the buyers. Right. If there's a platform that comes around that has the buyers, how many of the younger generations sell their one or two off items on their own? Thoughts?
I think the potential is there, but you still have a lot of those issues, and probably the biggest one is confidence and trust of, is what I'm buying truly
What they say it is.
What they say it is, and without some kind of assurance there. So I think from an auctioneer standpoint and from a dealer standpoint, what they do is they provide a huge level of trust. And when you're buying something, especially something that's six figures, that makes a big difference in that purchase. And so I don't know if an online marketplace will supplant that level of trust.
Corey, do you do your own research when you're buying something, or do you trust it? I can't keep it straight.
Corey
face.
does his own research.
I do try to do most of my own research, but
Takes links from his banker and buys pieces of.
I was just going to say that when I think about selling something, if I have
Go ahead, you're fine.
If I have
Just close
a good piece of equipment that I know is good and would bring good money, and I have no problem selling it to a neighbor, I will list that myself because I know its value.
If it's crap,
I
you're
got
going to say,
Tractor
call
Zoom.
Dave.
If it's something, I still don't want to sell crap, but if it's an older piece of equipment, might need some work or something like that, Dave.
Consignment.
Because I don't want to see the people, I don't want to look them in the eye when they come to get it because I'm embarrassed. Not embarrassed, but I don't know.
I might have known somebody that didn't even want to use a local rep because of how embarrassed they were about the piece of equipment that they sold and used a completely out of area sales rep to put it on a completely out of area.
So there's
market.
what you get at auctions because I've been on the other end of that way too many times, and that is the ease of online auctions is, oh yeah, that's a good price, and you get there and it doesn't have the hours they said it had, or miles, or it wasn't overhauled, or the thing. I had a buddy that blew up, a semi blew up 5 miles down the road after picking it up. Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, I do think that with that level of trust, and we tried to sell a planter. We bought a DB60 from a neighbor 2 years ago. So we had our existing planter. We tried to sell it on just online marketplace and weren't getting the price that we thought we'd get. Took it to auction, got essentially the price that we thought we'd get.
Awesome.
And so, the whole difference was maybe about $5,000, but it was just, it didn't bring it on the online marketplace, I think because there was no assurance that, this is what
How
we said
would
it
you
was.
like to buy something from Andy? You're not going to win any negotiation with Andy. He's going to sit there and
He's
goes,
got all the data.
just so you know, I've got 1 billion sale results.
This is the problem with data. I love data, right? Because I give it to everybody. But the problem with data is it's so readily available for every person out there. my people I'm selling for in XYZ auction, I won't even say, but call me from states away that a family member of theirs, that they're not even involved in agriculture, not involved with farm, but by God, they Googled it.
They should have seen.
And so their Google search says it's worth this much money. And so now they have unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
And so if you have unrealistic expectations, my job doesn't become sell the item. It's convince the seller what the item should bring, and that's whatever somebody's willing to give.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we actually see a few of our dealers. We didn't intend this, but they'll use our tool Iron Comps, which is kind of our B2B offering for Tractor Zoom, and they'll find a bunch of comparable sales, but it's picture heavy. And then all the descriptions are right there. They'll pull that up and then show that to a prospective buyer and say, here, if you're looking at this trade-in, here's everything I see in the marketplace of what your planter, what your sprayer, whatever, what I would compare that to. And just very transparently show them everything. And so that kind of combats that a little bit, where somebody can find a one-off like outlier that's way up here that they can say, okay, but I have these 50 that have happened within the last 2 months, and here they are. Here's the average. Here's 2 that
Right.
are exactly like yours. And then they can just be incredibly transparent, and then helps the deal move along.
I like this. Well, guys, I got one leading question to kind of wrap this up, unless you guys are sitting on more yourselves.
Corey's got more, I'm sure.
Oh, hitting back on this one.
Yeah, he's sleeping on this one.
All right. Let's throw some predictions out there.
Okay.
You've got some trends. You're obviously seeing some things that maybe are just emerging. What are some predictions we can leave our listeners with?
Well, I think that the past 2 years have been really supply constrained, demand driven, and so I see that in the external market that's changing. You've got all the things that are happening on with China, Ukraine, South America having that bumper crop for the most part, and so I think all of that is going to probably reduce our farmer profitability somewhat. To what degree, I don't entirely know. We know some supply is coming back. Probably won't be what we thought it was, but the game is certainly changing a little bit, and so I think. All in all, what it's going to do is it's going to slow down the growth of farm equipment for most of it, probably except for that very, very low hour stuff. I think we're still going to be, if you want to compete for that and you want to pay for it, you're going to. But I think we can probably cool down the rhetoric that we had the last couple of years of sell anything for any price and it'll go. I think now we have to just drop back to a bit more of a realism. I think still, though, especially from your standpoint of what is my stuff worth, what's the depreciation going to be, I think everything is getting just unique. There's the bolt-ons, just the individuality of all the equipment. I think you're going to have to really just not say, hey, 7 years and 1/7 every single year. I think it's all going to be a lot more. Find me the comparables and use technology to tell me what my stuff is worth now and 2 or 3 years from now.
Good.
Yep.
I'll go a different direction with my question. What's the best time to buy for our buyer listeners
Wonderful
in
question.
the future?
Oh, I was asked that just a couple days ago. This YouTuber that works on compact tractors asked me that too. And it's a double-edged sword, because if I showed you the low months in the market, they would truly be the low average months of the market when you can buy something, and you're also going to buy crap in those markets. From what I've seen over the years is there are certainly seasonal low months where average prices drop down, but it's almost always, there's a reason.
It's low
And I think
quality.
It's low quality. And I think people are, for the most part, saying, hey, in May, I'm not going to sell anything good in May. Same with October.
Yeah.
And I'll see dips in the market in those particular months. So I think you have to really, if you're looking for a buy, what you need to do is be Johnny on the spot, and also think about from the, combines sell really well in December, obviously, because it's the end of the year for 179 purposes and stuff. They also sell in July and August. Everybody unloads it at that point in time. If you want a good deal, you have to be dialed in at the time when all this is coming to the market and be one of the first people to know about it. And so you have to kind of think of when the seasonality is going to be. So combines, you can buy a good combine in the spring part of the year, but July, early part of August, that's a good time to buy. But you have to have, on Tractor Zoom, we have saved searches. You go in there and just say, I want a combine that's exactly like this, whether it's, a particular model with so many hours and I don't want to pay over this price. You put that saved search in there. And so then it emails you when it pops up. You have to have that kind of awareness in the market, because, it's not, there's not an overabundance of stuff in the market now where you can just go to any auction and say, I'm going to get a better price at this time of year.
Yeah.
I think it's almost an individual type of targeting that needs to happen now, and you have to use technology to be able to hone in on that and use it.
my question. You kind of covered some of it, but you used to go to an auction to get a deal, right? That's why people went to an auction. You might be able to get a steal on something.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of a necessity just because the inventory is lacking everywhere, so people need to find something. So they are looking on lots. They're looking at auction. Is there, so you talked about there's still some buys out there at certain times, but is there still those, smoking deals ever? Like they got that combine at half price, or they got that tractor or
it's when
planter
you
or
when
whatever.
you know the church lady and you bring her kumala all the time, or go eat her kumala, and
Okay.
then you're able to get the private buy.
Okay. So it's the private. Do you see stuff fall to bed at all anymore or not?
You see some things maybe fall to bed. Private can work, and so that's having good relationships. Obviously, you can't completely rely on that because it takes one other party that you happen to know at the right time.
Yep.
And so that part's hard. If you are looking for deals, I would say knowing the category trends right now. So, we haven't talked about this much, and I know it's not a huge ticket item, but like compacts. So if you pay attention to the whole external market during the pandemic, compacts obviously, everybody wanted one to go work in their yard when they weren't really working on their computer.
Yep.
And so many were bought. They were easy to ramp up. So the OEMs, everybody could ramp up production faster on compacts. So they flooded the market. Now we're seeing those return to the market like crazy. Dealerships are having a lot more. They're coming back to auction a lot more. And so I would say knowing the trends in the market is almost a better way to find that diamond in the rough, or maybe that better buy. And right now, compacts, I would wait. If you don't need it to, haul dirt this spring, if you are going to really use it for a project this summer, wait till this summer, and that's a good time to buy.
And they're going to be dirt cheap.
Dirt.
So then you go buy 50 of those, flip them once they go bigger, and then you can buy a combine.
There you go.
There you go. There you go. Holding costs.
Dave's consignment of compacts.
Good. All right. If you guys are out of questions, we're going to challenge them with our last questions. You can think about this for a little bit. But
May need to.
What does success look like or mean to you? So as you think about that, what does success mean to you? I'll kind of summarize what we're going on today. I'll warn you, don't listen to what I'm saying. You got to think about your answer. So we're caught back up with Tractors, and we had Andy here to give us a couple of updates. We hit right away in the beginning of this category. Started with the combines. We state that there's a little bit more inventory out there now. We're still seeing some strong prices. Obviously, the older, higher-houred machines are the ones that are falling off the most. Row crop, as an entire sector of tractors, is continuing to remain really strong. And we haven't seen a ton of additional inventory hit the market in that side of things. Planters are a tough one. We learned that 12-row sizes is the ones that are selling for the most per row unit, followed by 16-row. The larger you get, maybe a little softer they are, but they've got to be smart planters. We got to look at them to see if they've got the performance upgrade kits on them, the updates for those planters. But that's another reason we're not seeing as many planters sell as we did in the past, is people are upgrading those rather than purchasing just a brand new one. We also talked a little bit about sprayers. Sprayers are kind of the same thing, just not quite as dramatic. Also, we learned at Commodity Classic that there are performance upgrade kits now for sprayers to maybe extend the life technology-wise for those. Selling methods continue to be a combination of online and simulcast. The sellers are still about the same categories that we had in September as far as that goes. And when we get down to predictions for where we're headed, it's a good thing to have Tractor Zoom on your side, because you'll be able to use that data to maybe find yourself an opportunity for a buy, or know when your time and what piece it is right to sell as far as that goes. So that was what I had for a summary. Looks like he's ready. What does success mean to you?
So deep question. I did not expect this one. And if you would have asked me in my 20s, in my 30s, I would have definitely given you a different answer, because I've had a ton of different careers that I've been on and chased a lot of things. But now that I'm, quote unquote, older and wiser, I think I can say, though, that it's now, if you wake up in the morning eager to do what you're going to do. Like if we've all had those days where you wake up and you just want to go back to bed. But if you wake up like, I cannot wait to start this, that's the one thing. If you go to bed smiling, you're like fulfilled. If you're like, today was a good day. And then in between that, you got to bookend it with, during the day, whatever you fill your day with. I think if you are chasing something that you're passionate about, that you're eager to do, but it's far enough and it's maybe fast enough in front of you that it's not assured that you're going to get it. Like, you know, you're not hitting a softball. You're going after something that's challenging, that you're not sure that it's worthy, but it's not for sure, you know, home run. If you can make that the middle part of your day, and then again, go to bed, like, today was a good day, I accomplished something, feel good about it, then I think at that point you'll feel successful and be good. And I think it's not like you're, you know, successful, content, and you're done, you can retire. I think because you've got that system set up, you're going to go back at it the next day, and you're going to do great things over the course of time. So hopefully you'll be financially successful. Hopefully if you're farming, you're going to be bountiful. But whatever it is that you're doing, I think you're going to be rocking it. So that was kind of how I'd define it.
I love that answer. That was good. Awesome. Andy, for our listeners, while Dave thinks of a challenge, how do they get a hold of you? How do they track down Tractor Zoom?
Okay, so Tractor Zoom, they can go to tractorzoom.com. So that's kind of the best place to find more about us. You can find tons of different equipment. And like I said, you can set up a search. You can favorite equipment. So then it's just automatically alerting you when your diamond in the rough is out there. And so you can find that amazing deal. It's probably about the only way you can do it. And you know, for me, my email is acampbell@tractorzoom.com. So it's Campbell like the soup. But I don't own the soup company, at tractorzoom.com. So that's how they can get a hold of me. And I'll take any kind of emails all the time. The more I interact with.
Anytime. Like, you might want to.
Our listeners are pretty shady.
So, yeah, I'll say that now. Yeah, we might need to scrub that out later if it gets too bad.
They'll be all right.
Oh, that's right. That's great. Thank you. Dave, what do you got?
Challenge would be to embrace the data. So embrace the data. $27 billion worth of equipment annually, okay, that they're tracking. So a specific Tractor Zoom challenge. In the upper right-hand corner, I believe, if it's still up there, there's My Inventory. You farmers can actually go up there and put every one of your own pieces of equipment in there and see like how much money you have in equipment based on the averages. Then when you decide to sell, you have some data there. You can even track it year to year. It takes an email. You got to put an email in, okay? But you're going to put your email in, but start using that data. There's $27 billion worth of data there. All the decisions we talk about on Farm for Profit have been kind of data-based.
Yep.
Well, we haven't really talked equipment-wise that way.
No, I like that. That was a great challenge.
I got one more thing I thought of. This is what I'm famous for, is thinking of something when no one, you know, we're supposed to be done. But I would be not a farmer if I didn't ask this. This is the most popular thing that people like to talk about on social media when people talk about diesel tractors.
Should I get a free hat?
Well,
that too.
besides
Sorry.
free hats at farm shows.
What sells better, John Deere case?
DEF and emissions, the
Yes.
cutoff there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a definitive line, are you seeing, you know, in the data?
I was.
Yep.
And again, I did that analysis before the supply, you know, constraints, and so that just threw everything. You know, people were grabbing at anything, and so. But I did an analysis of certain horsepower tractors. You know, some DEF, some pre-DEF, and what we were seeing is it was essentially the depreciation because those were older, and that we were seeing a better, retained value older in life for those older pre-DEF ones. Now I haven't done the analysis. Now that I think. Back then, we might have had a few $1 billion worth of data. Yeah. I haven't done it since then, and so I'm going to jot that down.
It's
as
the
another
most
analysis.
popular. I mean, every time I put a TikTok out talking about a John Deere tractor that sold for too much money, everyone, that didn't have DEF. You know, everyone.
Yeah.
They love to talk about it.
I just want to. Maybe we can actually settle the debate between is it red or green, whichever's better. I'm sure you've got the data to talk about depreciation and how rapidly one over the other holds value or not.
Yep.
I don't think we want to tackle that here.
No, I don't want to do that on camera.
That one might alienate us.
That
would make
means
for a
we
good
know
TikTok.
what it is.
We
know
work
what
with
it
both
is.
dealers. We work with
People
both.
buy Peterbilt because it sells good, and people buy a certain color tractor because it sells good. So,
No, this was great. Andy, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. This
thanks
was
for
a
having us.
blast. We appreciate the partnership with Tractor Zoom. It continues to be a good data source for us and our listeners.
Good deal. We appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Thank you so much. And listeners, we thank you too. And until next time, have a good one.